Hey guys, and welcome to a tournament showdown between myself, a Rubber Duck of War, leading the Lizardmen, up against the mighty Ronin and his Empire forces. This was played in Valkanos's recent tournament, which you can go see on his channel as well, with some super fun games. So this is a semi-final showdown. So for my Dino build here, I'm going for my traditional anti-Empire build. So in the front line, we've got a mixture of skink cohorts as well as Saurus warriors to grind through those state troops, and at the same time go pretty wide just in case my opponent has indeed brought a gun line. We also have the cohort of Sotek here, regiment of renowned skinks who can refuse to die, good durability overall, and the Empire tend to bring a lot of cavalry, so pop and refuse to die as they hammer into your front line is, a pretty nice perk as well. We have a lone Gary here, the Feral Bastildon, once again there to push through those state troops and hop on top of any cannons, gunners, and all those nasty troops. For our leadership core, we do have a Saurus Old Blood here, coming in, of course, with the Amulet of Itzel here. Very good ability, plus 66% damage resistance, can only be used once per game. We have a Skink Priest of Heavens, coming in with Wind Blast, Harmonic Convergence, and more importantly, Curse of the Midnight Wind, minus 30 armor and 24 melee attack, can certainly turn cavalry engagements. Now, speaking of cavalry, I have two flanks fully loaded here. So 2 units of Cold Riders on the left flank, one of which is Spear Riders and Silver Chevroned, and exactly the same on the other flank as well. These guys can actually trade pretty cost effectively against Demigryph Knights even, especially when bunched up together and Curse of the Midnight Wind is active. Hidden in the trees, we have double Chameleon Skinks, one of which is chevroned up because I had some leftover funds. Pretty good at pushing away Pistoliers and Outriders. So for the forces here of Ronin, up in the skies, we do have the mighty Karl Franz, the man, the myth, the legend. Coming in here with Garmaraz as well as the Reichland Runefang. He's always been a bit of a menace to the Lizardmen, good at hunting down dinos and characters alike. We have a huge skirmish corps come in with triple Outriders here. These guys do indeed have the rifles and lovely armor-piercing missiles. Should be able to do a lot of damage to my big dinosaurs. The main battle line is a couple of units of spearmen dotted all the way along, as well as some great swords just to add a bit more meat to the grinder and chew through the thick hides of the Saurus warriors. We have a ton of Empire Knights as well dotted around the battlefield. It looks like 2 great swords actually. With some Empire Knights on the right hand flank and 2 on the left hand side. Actually, it looks like these bad boys are Demigryph Knights with halberds. Now, in my opinion, I'm not sure if halberds are fantastic. They're pretty good in this matchup because they're good against dinosaurs. But against cavalry, the lance ones are actually a bit better, which is quite surprising. It looks like we also have a Jade Wizard as well, coming with Regrowth and Earthblood, of course. So without further ado, guys, let's get this battle underway. Chameleon Skinks are going to be poking through the forest here, trying to poke down the Outriders. From looking at his army, they are kind of the main threat to my force so far. Skink cohorts are being hammered by Franz here, but we're going to react pretty quickly here. Popping on top of him with Cold One Spear Riders and Cold One Riders, trying to surround the Franz Meister and drag him down nice and early. However, Outriders are here as well, so I'm going to be pushing forward to try and drive them back and away from this Franz engagement. It looks like the poor Feral Bastildon has rampaged here directly into Spearmen, not the best engagement for him. The Saurus Warriors are here to support, and they will chew through state troops very effectively. Looks like we are popping a Curse of the Midnight Wind. Unfortunately, a little bit too late here. Karl Franz has managed to use his mass to push away. And I imagine if he had minus 30 armor that entire time, we probably would have got him down to below half health, which would have been much nicer. Saurus Old Blood is taking a few bullets here, so I'm certainly going to be falling back to this tree line. And at this point, I've pretty much given up on the centre pocket. I'm going to try and dominate this left-hand flank. We've whipped some Cold One Riders around the outside, and they're going to be coming in for some lovely rear charges on Spearmen and Great Swords alike. Looks like the Empire Knights have had enough in the frontline engagement. Gary roaring victoriously and crushing a few of those armoured humans underneath his hooves. Or, I suppose, reptilian feet would be a better word to put it. Karl Franz does dive after him, so we're going to go on a suicide charge here onto the Jade Wizard, just trying to force him off. For his troubles, he's going to get absolutely blitzed by Outriders. However, our main infantry corps doing a pretty decent job, pushing through the Great Swords with their combined help of the Cold One Riders, as well as Skinks and Red Crested. We do have some Demigryph Knights floating around to the back, though. Saurus Oldblood charging in to terrify these troops, which will allow us to carve a ton of them up as they do retreat. And it looks like this flank has been dominated by myself, the left-hand flank and centre pocket dominated by the Empire. So in come the Demigryphs and Carl for a big charge here. We do luckily just about get a counter charge with the Cold One Riders, as well as dropping a Curse of the Midnight Wind, lowering the attack output by these Demigryphs and their armour quite heftily here. So we're actually going to be trading relatively effectively, considering we did kind of get surrounded and charged. Looks like the Chameleons are back online as well. Just doing a few blow darts into these guys, adding more poison, but a lovely counterplay by my opponent, coming with an Earthblood to keep these guys active, and doing decent cycle charging here with Karl Meister himself. Looks like the Outriders have turned their attention onto my Cold One Riders, who are mopping up some Empire Knights here in the trees. And, you know, Empire Knights are pretty good for hammering down skinks and the like, but they certainly don't want to be facing chevroned up Cold One Riders. The more ferocious Lizardmen do tend to do pretty good in this matchup. Saurus Oldblood is in a sticky situation. This is a really pivotal moment in the game. I'm firing every blow dart possible into Karl Franz to poison him and do damage. There's some lovely Earthbloods coming down. It's keeping him pretty active. Hammers of Itzel has been popped on the Saurus Oldblood to try and keep him alive and active, while the rest of my Lizardmen forces do kind of trundle over to try and get a surround and finish off this blob fight. Chameleons are still looking relatively healthy ammunition-wise as well, now shooting into Demigryphs and trying their best to bring these guys down. In the distance there, red-crested cohort of Sotek do try to pop on top of the Jade Wizard to try and fend him off. I realise he's quite a big problem here, healing up the mighty Franz, and in the distance some Cold One Riders did unfortunately rampage, but managed to catch some Outriders at least, so they go down with a little bit of a roar rather than just a whimper. Karl Franz coming in for a lovely cycle charge, once again getting healed up by Earthblood on top of the Saurus Oldblood, and we're just trying our best with our Chameleon Skinks to turn the engagement in my favour, but it does look like a battle we are slowly losing. Franz has taken so much damage, but he's still very fresh and revived here on that pesky Jade Wizard. The Saurus Oldblood is going to be falling back here. He's taken far too much damage from the Outriders, and the Great Swords will slowly be dragged down by these troops. I do go for a bit of a Leroy Jenkins on the Jade Wizard, but realise, you know what, it's probably not worth it. We're going to fall back and try and use the terrain to our advantage here, play a little bit of Saurus Oldblood peekaboo, and fall back behind these mountains to try and get out of the line of sight of the Outriders, whilst also baiting in Franz. So Chameleon Skinks don't seem to have done too much damage to him so far, but that's because he's been getting healed up massively. And as you can see, when he darts in here, he's actually taken huge damage from these mighty Skink boys. He also gets slowed down, allowing some Cold One Riders to try and get in here and do a little bit more damage. And being shot from all sides, Franz is getting absolutely annihilated here, and actually gets to the point of wavering. I do drop a Curse of the Midnight Wind on him once again, a tiny bit too late, trying to get in there with the Saurus Oldblood. And it looks like he does indeed pop the Rune Fang to gain 8 leadership and keep Franz from running away and possibly off the field, as he's rather fast, but he probably would have come back anyway. But still, really nice clutch play there by Ronan, some MLG stuff for sure. It looks like we are kind of just chilling in the centre pocket before once again moving in. A couple of Cold One Spear Riders just trying to pressure Demigryph Knights while they still have their little lives left on them. But there is still a ton of ammunition on these Outriders, so I'm very scared here for my Saurus Oldblood's life. As you can see, still cowering behind the mountain away from the pesky Karl Franz. Chameleon Skinks have unfortunately run out of ammunition now, which is a big problem, as they're one of my best answers to both the Outriders as well as the Franzinator. But in come the Demigryph Knights for one last glorious charge before Saurus Warriors do pull these brave Demigryphs from their steeds and force them to rout. And the Empire forces are starting to break here quite nicely, but another Earthblood goes down, and Karl Franz is going to get healed up once again. We're firing a last couple of volleys into him with our Chameleon Skinks, but we're now completely out of ammunition. A nice little blob force we have at this point though, and the Empire forces not known for their amazing leadership, so in the late game we certainly have some chances of perhaps getting some terror routes. Saurus Oldblood still kind of just cowering in the darkness for now. Trying to hammer down the Great Swords as much as possible, because until the infantry is gone, my opponent can feel free to cycle charge. We are of course playing tournament rules, which included the attacking rules. So once again, Saurus Oldblood is going to dart into the blob as Karl Franz desperately tries to come in here and assassinate him. And I'm going to go for the Hail Mary at this point. We pop Stand Your Ground to increase our melee defense, and we're going to hunt down Franz, getting some huge hits on his back there. And he actually starts to go very low leadership-wise. but he is going to escape once more. No poison darts left anymore to kind of hunt him down. Demigryph Knights are terrified and shattered by the Mighty Saurus Old Blood, but Franz comes in here, waving his hammer high, and a shriek from Deathclaw does send the Old Blood to the glorious Lizardmen afterlife. I wonder if they have a nice afterlife. I'd assume so if the old ones were kind to them. So at this point, I popped Harmonic Convergence, accidentally clicked on my Skink Priest here instead of the Chameleon Skinks. I'm trying to use them just to drag down some Demigryphs, but at this point, it is pretty much game over. It could have come down if I'd possibly managed to wipe Franz out a little bit earlier and had, the Saurus Old Blood still alive. Perhaps there was a chance, as the Outriders are relatively low ammunition-wise, but at this point we're kind of just a wandering blob at the mercy of the Empire forces, who are simply going to shoot us down and are slowly feeding other troops to the meat grinder. We do continue to fight out though, and try and hold the line as much as possible. The Skink Priest trying to rally troops and dropping cold-blooded left, right and centre, but good cycle charging from the Outriders coming in, and I do pull out at that point. But very well played to my opponent there. Super fun and close game. Let's go do a tiny bit of analysis. Once again, well played to Ronin. The whole best of 3 was super fun, and I'm thinking of doing at least one more video from it as well on the channel, probably at some point later in the week, so feel free to keep your eyes peeled for that. So I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did enjoy this battle, feel free to give it a big old thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more Total War Warhammer content. Now for the build, I'm still pretty happy with this Lizardman build, to be honest. I think there was just 1 or 2 misplays from me and some good micromanagement as well from Ronin to keep Franz alive. My 2 Curse of the Midnight Winds, which is a very powerful spell, basically both got completely wasted on Franz, as he just managed to escape every time I dropped it on him. If we'd managed to do it a bit earlier at the start, Franz would have been in a very tricky situation, or if we had perhaps dropped it on the Demigryph blob one more time. We got 1 good curse off, I think, but getting 1 more decent one, possibly on the Great Swords or the Demigryphs, could perhaps have turned the battle. Now for Ronin's perspective, his build really solid overall, relying quite heavily on the Outriders to do some decent work. And they certainly did pay their weight in gold, doing huge damage to the poor Gary Basildon, as well as taking away the threat of the Cold One Riders. Some pretty decent damage as well to the Old Blood. So basically getting on top of all their key targets, which was a real kind of turning point in this game. Anyway guys, hope you did enjoy, and yeah, if you want to send in replays to me to cast, feel free to join my Discord. There is a link just down below in the description, as well as a link to kind of everything else YouTube related, Patreons and all that kind of stuff. And YouTube has actually now kind of messaged me saying, oh hey, you can have members on your YouTube channel as well. So if you want to become a duck, a royal duck, a king duck, or a duck god, press the join button to find out more information. Anyway guys, until next time, peace, and as always, stay awesome.